Živijo, 1. aprilski ponedeljek je in vaš najljubši podcast je končno spet tu. Dobrodošli na temni strani Lune, z vami sva
Maruša
in Dunja. Na temni strani Lune odkrivamo skrivnosti in se pogovarjamo o astronomiji od A do Ž. In ker ste tukaj z nami, bi se najprej radi zahvalili Matjažu za kavico, pravzaprav za kavice, zato da sva lahko zbujeni tudi, ko snemava epizode, kar se sicer dogaja precejkrat bolj proti večeru ali pa ponoči. Tako da hvala Matjažu in hvala tudi vsem ostalim, ki ste prispevali za kavice in s tem tudi podprli naš podcast, najin podcast. Že od leta 2023 zbirava kavice in sedaj sva na taki lepi številki 143 kavic. Hvala torej vsem. Če bi tudi ostali radi podprli tale podcast, pa lahko greste na spletno stran ko-fi.com / temna stran Lune.
No, zdaj pa o temi meseca. Tokrat je tema zelo posebna in polna navdiha. Pogovarjali smo se namreč z Mirjano Pović, astronomko, ki se ukvarja s preučevanjem življenj oddaljenih galaksij. Živi in dela v Etiopiji in tam ogromen del svojega časa namenja delu z otroci ulice in mladimi na robu družbe, predvsem dekleti in ženskami, in jih s pomočjo astronomije spodbuja, da nadaljujejo šolanje in potem tudi svoje naravoslovno znanje predajajo naprej. Z Mirjano sva se pogovarjali zvečer in to potem, ko je cel dan preživela na sestankih, in zato se ji toplo zahvaljujeva za njen čas in pa tudi za izjemno navdihujoč pogovor. Pogovarjali smo se v angleščini, intervju pa sva prevedli v slovenščino in je v pisni obliki na voljo na najini spletni strani. Povezavo kot vedno najdete v zapiskih. Prisluhnimo. Mirjana Pović is a Serbian-Spanish astrophysicist. She is researching galaxy formation and evolution, but she's also involved in a number of projects in Africa related to education, institutional development, and education of women and girls. She's based at the Ethiopian Space Science and Technology Institute and collaborates with the Institute of Astrophysics of Andalusia in Spain, and she's an honorary lecturer at the Mbarara University of Science and Technology in Uganda. She received multiple awards. Most notably, she received the inaugural Nature Research Estée Lauder Inspiring Science Award and also inaugural Jocelyn Bell Burnell Inspirational Model from the European Astronomical Society.
Thank you, Mirjana, for joining us on the Dark Side of the Moon podcast, where we want to shed light on lesser-known aspects of astronomy. So thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Dunja and Maruška, for your invitation. It's really great to be here with both of you.
So let's start about your curiosity about astronomy. How did this journey start? How did you become passionate about astronomy?
Yes, well, I think my passion about astronomy and science in general, it was not like just a question of one single event, so it was a question of time and, a little bit by little bit with different steps, that kind of connection and passion was building. And I was always interested in science. I was always very curious about the nature around us and explaining the things. And I always, in a certain way, had passion and was curious about the things that I didn't have like easy answers, so at the time when I was doing my primary school, secondary school, the internet was not there. I didn't have computer or access to any computer. And then at the same time, the access to information was limited. At school, we didn't really have astronomy as a subject, so it was also not easy to learn a lot about astronomy. But the main point when I started developing the passion about astronomy, I think, was related with spending many, many nights contemplating the dark sky. So the civil war in old Yugoslavia started when I just started the primary school. When I was 7, 8 years old, already all the violence started, and like the news with turbulent conflicts here and there, and then the war extended, and it was there for almost 10 years. And during all that time, I think growing up in old Yugoslavia was really not easy. Hearing every time, I mean, first of all, I never understood why really the war is happening, and hearing every day about the violence and, who is good, who is bad, and so on. And, hearing about hatred instead of, promoting love was really not an easy thing. And then just all the conditions of life as well. And I think when we are, the war was there like 1 year after another. And so it really came to the point where, we didn't even know when it's gonna end, and how that is gonna be, because it totally normalized, So the war became our normality, And as I said, listening about violence every single day, And I think that when we are growing up as children, we have our dreams, and to project our dreams toward the future, to imagine how the world is out there, you need a safe space. And around us, growing up in old Yugoslavia, I think it was very hard to have that, to construct that safe space. And at least for me, I was finding that safe space really by contemplating the dark sky. So we had a lot of power restrictions in Serbia at that time. The power cuts were regular, basically on a daily basis. And then, with all the power cuts, you would get a beautiful dark sky because of the lack of light pollution. And as I said, by contemplating that dark sky, I actually started connecting with the space in a certain way. On one side, I was able to get that safe space so that I can project my dreams, think about the world, future, society, and so on. And then on the other side, also to develop questions, and to develop the curiosity and start asking questions. What are the stars? How far away they are? Why they are generating light, and so on. And I started thinking that, well, I don't have answers on these questions right now, but one day I'm sure I will find them, And then, that's how everything really started. And then, as I said, step by step, when I came to the secondary school, I got a physics teacher that was really, who was really amazing. He was so passionate about the work he was doing. He was caring so much about the students. So I got interested about physics even more. And then I was feeling sufficiently confident to ask him additional questions about astronomy, additional material about astronomy. And then in the last year of the secondary school, we had a chance to visit the small observatory, public observatory, like City Observatory in Belgrade. And that's where like all the world of astronomy opened. I found out that it's possible to study astronomy at the university level. I found out that I can do like a small course for like young astronomers, and with that go to the observatory, work as a like young assistant during weekend with a small telescope, explain to the citizens the sky. So I went through all of that. I met professional astronomers. And that was a bit the crucial point, I would say, to finally decide to study astronomy at the university level, yes.
And you are now working in galaxy formation and evolution, if I'm correct. So what is the aspect that fascinates you the most in this particular field?
Yes, well, the field of galaxy formation and evolution is very big. It's really large. Most of my research career was focused on nuclear activity in galaxies and studying the properties of active galaxies that are some of the brightest sources that we have in the universe. And being some of the brightest sources that we have in the universe, they are really very important for understanding they're basically the cosmological labs. So they are really important for understanding the universe in its young stage, so how the galaxies and the universe as a whole was in the first few billion years after the Big Bang, and then how the galaxies evolved as well. So for me, these galaxies are really fascinating. We still have many open questions related with their activity and many things that we still don't understand, like how really how the active phase in galaxy evolution will be triggered and how it will start. How that is again evolving across the cosmic time. They have very, very particular physics that we still don't fully understand. And in order to study these sources, you need multi-wavelength data across the whole electromagnetic spectrum, from low energies to high energies. You also, we are dealing with classical Newtonian physics, but also with relativistic conditions. So they really open a lot of space for actually broadening our knowledge, and also some of so I would say that I started my PhD with studying these active galaxies, and I'm still into it, and I think they really still continue being like some of the most fascinating sources that we have in the universe.
You're also very active in Africa, as we've heard before. So how did your fascination with Africa start? How did Africa come into your life?
Well, it's Africa actually came in my life probably in a very on one side similar way, like as astronomy. And since I was really very young, so even before I, became a professional astronomer and got into all the projects that I've been involved with over the past 20 years, I remember that even when I was really quite small, every time I would hear about Africa, it was, my curiosity was there. On one side, I think because of all the diversity that is there, which I still admire, I still see the African continent being so diverse, not only on the continental level, but when you go to many of the countries, the diversity that is there is really impressive. For example, in Ethiopia, where I spent now the last 10 years living, we have more than 80 ethnic groups, well, more than 100 ethnic groups, more than 80 languages. And when you move from one part of the country to another, it's not like moving from one region to another. It looks like really you moved from one country to another country, or even changing fully the continent, So as I said, we are talking about really an amazing diversity in terms of humanity, in terms of all the cultures, traditions, but then also in terms of all the natural diversity, like plants, animals. So that is definitely something that for me then opens, as I said, a lot of curiosity to actually learn more about all different cultures. But then on the other side, also, I think I was maybe because, as I mentioned previously, growing up in old Yugoslavia, it was not easy. There were so many challenges in the society all around us with many people that, seeing many people that really didn't have the basic needs covered. And that was also a situation including in my own family, So I think I really developed quite a high level of sensitivity, toward different social problems. And I think connecting that with many news that we were getting about African countries, with many challenges, difficulties that were there, like the combination of the two, on one side, the curiosity that I mentioned, on the other side, the frustration that we are living in the world that is so unequal, and that somehow I always wanted actually to work where the needs are higher, so I think that kind of combination really remained up to now. I think that I still have that passion that for me, African continent is like a book without end, the book that you can read and trying to understand without reaching the end. So it's a bit like exploring the universe as an astronomer, so in that aspect, it's quite similar. But then on the other side, I have to admit that I think that the world which we are currently having, we improved as a humanity in many aspects. Many of the values we are now losing with all that is going on across the world. So I think we are degrading in our values in many aspects that have been achieved with a lot of work that currently it's quite worrying what is happening. But I think that as I said, having the world being so unequal between the global north, global south, for me, it's unacceptable. And it took many years to actually find a way how, as an astronomer, we can contribute to the betterment of the society and really empowering communities that are going through difficult circumstances and challenges. Nowadays, I don't have any doubt, So it was really like a journey of learning and discovering and, also contributing to making the change together with my colleagues. But yeah, I think I replied on your question, initial question, yes.
And you are also very committed to projects that actually use science and astronomy in particular to improve the lives and societies in Africa. Why do you think astronomy and maybe science at large has this power? Can you also give us some insights about some of those projects that you are involved in?
Yes, as I mentioned previously, I started with the very first volunteer work more than 20 years ago in Africa. And it was just in the first year of my PhD. And when I came back from to the IC, I was at the IC at that time. So when I came back after spending more than 3 months in Tanzania and Kenya, working with street kids and working in free orphanages and with HIV positive women that were all widows. At that time, there was almost no conversation about astronomy and society, astronomy for development, how using astronomy, as I said, we can make the changes in our society toward, like a positive change, And I was about to actually leave my PhD. Finally, I decided to finish my PhD, but I had clear that after PhD, I want to live and work in Africa. So I did that. I finished my PhD and then I moved to South Africa. At that time, that was in 2010, South Africa was the only country where, as professional astronomer, I was able to get the job. And I went to South Africa because, as I said, it was the only country with the idea that I don't leave the science so that I can continue working in academia, but then I really wanted to work with the communities, And then after that, I started extending collaborations to other countries. First, and always in parallel. On one side, getting in touch with colleagues that worked at the universities' research centers, like very first research centers, and with very first groups in astronomy in Rwanda, Uganda, Ghana, Kenya, in addition to South Africa. And then at the same time, working with communities that have been underrepresented. So in particular with students, kids in orphanages, with the street kids that I mentioned as well. And because I was an astronomer, every time that although I would be giving other classes, but I would be putting astronomy. And I actually realized that every time that we do speak about astronomy, the whole environment changed, And I saw that in particular with the very first works with the street kids. First in Tanzania and Kenya, then in Rwanda, then in Ghana, in South Africa as well. And the street kids are children that are really some of the most vulnerable communities that we have. We are talking about kids that are fully living on the street, out of their families, being very often, in most of the cases, totally abandoned from the rest of the society, because the rest of the society will see them as a problem and as a part of, the criminal groups, delinquents, prostitution, or the sex work, and so on. And it's true that if there are no programs that when the kids come to the street, that soon after they end up on the street, there are programs that can, bring them out, they will end into most of them into either delinquents for boys, for girls in the sex work and so on, because there are no many other options, no? And what I want to stress is that these kids are normally out of the schooling system, and it's very hard to actually bring them back, to bring them to the discipline and bring them back. And every time that I was with groups of street kids, when we start speaking about astronomy, asking questions, their attention will be there. And that attention is very valuable. It's not only that they develop interest about astronomy, it's actually that we bring their curiosity to something related with learning process, with education, with schooling, and with curiosity, so that they can start developing their interest, And that's just one of the examples. That's where I saw I would say the impact that astronomy could have, working with, as I said, communities that are totally marginalized, and that is very hard to bring their attention to something that is part of the learning process, And then, they would have the same, normally we see that they share the same curiosity, of course, what the universe is all about, how big it is, how everything started, is there a life elsewhere, and so on and so on. So astronomy can, and I mean, that's only one example. Basically, every time that we go to communities that are living in challenging conditions, so either remote rural areas where the facilities to any additional learning are very limited or non-existing, or we go to the communities that that went through the conflicts, wars, where the level of poverty is higher, and so on. We can see that actually through astronomy, we can really empower. One of the examples, one of the projects that is really very close to my heart is the SkyGrowth project that I've been running with a great team of my colleagues in Ethiopia. It's the project that we started in 2022, and that has been supported by the OED for several years. And it's a project that is focused on empowering girls that are living in remote rural areas of Ethiopia. That is basically 80% of Ethiopian population, together with their female teachers. And in addition, particularly focusing on the conflict-affected areas, because since 2020, A big part of Ethiopia has been affected by conflicts, either by full-scale war that we had for a few years in the northern part, or now like turbulent conflicts that are happening in different parts of the country. And these girls, so we basically do the very strong capacity building training. We bring the girls and their female teachers to the capital, to Addis. So they have to, for most of them, they have to leave their community, their village, for the first time in their life, initiate the trip that sometimes lasts for 2 days to reach the capital. So even that is already part of, let's say, empowering them, because Addis is like a bubble in the rest of Ethiopia in terms of the development. And then for most of them, it's the first time that they can hear about astronomy, space science, remote sensing, satellite technologies, learn that there is a research center that is focused on space science sector and technology, visit the Entoto Observatory Research Center that we have and all the facilities there, learn about big data science, artificial intelligence. So all of these are the topics that we are covering. And the idea is that we actually create the ambassadors of STEM, so that we have the girls and female teachers that are role models, that they are promoting the science in their communities. So they actually compromise that after they go back to their communities, they will organize the series of activities, and that they will transfer the knowledge to all the boys, girls, other teachers, males, females in their communities. And I have to say that through this program, we can really see that we are empowering girls. Every time after the training, we do the evaluation, and almost 100% of them, between 90% and 100%, will be the feedback that they really felt empowered after attending the whole training. No, and as I said, that's just another example where we can see that astronomy is really very inspiring science. But it's really the same every time that we go to any remote rural area, interacting, as I said, with the communities that are really marginalized. Another example is with the penitentiary centers. In Spain, we are starting now with my colleagues the project with astronomy workshop in penitentiary center, one of the biggest penitentiary centers in Spain. And then in Ethiopia, I had also a chance to do the outreach in penitentiary center, but for children between 8 and 16 years old that unfortunately, because of all the conditions of life and challenges, came to the situation to commit some distortion of, that are in the conflict with the law. No? And in both cases, with adults and then with children and young people, the experience also has been amazing. When we interact with adults, we have a big part of the community in penitentiary centers that are actually lacking literacy, that are still without skills of properly reading, writing, and so on. However, you start speaking about astronomy, and they will come with their own curiosity, asking questions, about the space, and you can really see, that can help. It can help that they get interest about, again, learning, and also developing that curiosity, critical mindset, and so on. And then with the children in Ethiopia, exactly the same. They do have difficulties, many of them in attending school, going through the learning process. But then you start speaking about astronomy. We bring the small telescope. They will create the long queue waiting, to look through the solar telescope, to see how the sun looks like, and then asking many, many different questions. No, so I really nowadays, as I said, after so many years of interacting with the community, that really became like my passion, part of my passion beside research, and actually where I see really the impact of science. No, not only doing research, but actually, as I said, empowering societies, communities through this learning process and development of the curiosity. Yes. Then, in addition to that, I would also like to add that my work in Ethiopia, Uganda, other African countries also had the aspect of bringing more diversity to science, because what we do and what astronomy, one of the main, let's say, benefits of the astronomy for the humanity, in my view, is really knowledge generation. That we are constantly on the border of our knowledge, and by asking all these big questions that we don't have answers, we are actually pushing the whole humanity, to build a huge knowledge that is basically part of our heritage of the whole. It's a heritage of the whole humanity, and I think that right to knowledge generation is a basic human right. It shouldn't be a right that those countries that are better economically standing, that are high-income countries, have more right to invest in science, and then the other countries that are more going through the challenges, difficulties, that they have less right to invest in science. Because we know that if we don't invest in science, then we cannot have technology, then we cannot have innovation, then we cannot have, economy based on knowledge, so knowledge-based economy, and so on and so on. So we will never improve this huge difference between the global south, global north, low-income, high-income countries if we really don't bring more science and we don't work on the human capacity development. So a big part of, let's say, the impact of astronomy on society, being the cutting-edge science, is actually bringing that human capacity and going through the human capacity building across Africa by training bringing the highly qualified people to the sector that then can go in any other field through astronomy, so that in the longer term, we can improve education, improve science in Africa, and therefore the rest of the world. And as I said, bring the inequality that we have in the world to be less, and ideally to become zero, so that we can really have the countries that are, less inequality among countries. Yes.
Wow, that's so many different inspiring activities. And so one of them is also, it's called the African Network of Women in Astronomy. And I think it was founded 5 years ago. So could you tell us a bit about this community? How is it growing, and what are some of the achievements in these years?
Yes. So AFNWA, the African Network of Women in Astronomy, indeed, we started, well, officially we launched it, you're right, 5 years ago. But actually the idea started like 2 years before that. I had the idea I realized that we actually need such kind of network as soon as I moved to Ethiopia, because when I moved to Ethiopia in 2015 and then in 2016, when the first research center was established, I was the only woman I was the only woman with the PhD. There were only few astronomers, but I was the only woman with a PhD among all the space science fields that were there and the departments. I was also the only foreigner. I was also the youngest woman there, and with the PhD, and we all got a lot of duties, and and there were many challenges to actually go through, because also just the integration, all the process of integrating into the country, community, society that was quite different from what I was used to and other countries that I was working, and it took really time. And after some time, after arriving in Ethiopia, just because I had a need to interact with more women in science, I figured that there is a Society of Ethiopian Women in Science and Technology, so I joined the network. And that was extremely helpful. And then there, I realized that actually the same situation in which I was, many other women from the society were facing, women that were working particularly in fundamental sciences. So I had one of the colleagues that was alone at the Department of Mathematics at one of the universities, in physics at the other, and so on. So it was actually the situation of many women that they were working totally alone at their departments, faculties, and so on, as women, And then with time, I was realizing that in astronomy, it is also happening in other countries. So I really I thought that even, as I said, before the AFNO was created, that there is really need that we have a certain network, that we can bring all women that are working in astronomy as professional astronomers, but also young women that are just starting with their master, PhD, so that on one side we can offer support to each other, but on the other side that we also guarantee the active participation of women from the beginning, because many African countries at the same time when Ethiopia, Uganda were starting with astronomy development, many other African countries were starting. So, having women as part of that very first development, being part of it, same as men, was really important, so that we don't face the same situation as in Europe, that we have already several decades of development, and then women were not actively participating in that, And then in 2018, when I got the Nature Research Award for Inspiring Science, there was the economical part of the award as well. And then I decided that half of the award I will dedicate to all the activities that I was doing and I was involved with in Ethiopia with girls and women. And then other part that we could dedicate for creating this network. So I got in touch with several of my colleagues that were based at different parts of the continent, north, east, west, south. And that's how we actually started. So we then, at the same time, in 2019, the African Astronomical Society was reestablished. And in 1 year, AFAS became really very active, very vibrant. And basically, women that we were in the board of AFNWA, we were also quite involved in the development of AFAS. So we said, well, the objectives of AFAS go in line with the objectives of AFNWA. So let us suggest AFAS that AFNWA is one of the committees, so that we develop AFNWA together under the umbrella of the African Astronomical Society. And that is what we did. So since then officially it was launched in January 2021. And in this last 5 years, AFNWA really became quite active network. We have now around 150 members, 80% are women, 20% are men, that we are really proud of because as we know, the gender gap in science that we have, it's not just a problem of women or question of women, it's a problem of whole society. And this 20% of men that we have is actually higher than in many other communities. I think that women in astronomy, the IU Women in Astronomy group has only about 5%. And the IU is the largest professional society, and you have this Women in Astronomy group under the IU that I think about 20% of all members are IU members are part, but then very small fraction of men, you know. And as I said, we started with significant number of activities. I mean, being all quite busy and being everything just a volunteer work. From the first year, we started giving the awards together with the International Science Program and the Uppsala University to recognize the work of young women, senior women in Africa in astronomy, and to give more visibility. We published the first book 2 years ago with 50 stories going from master students to professional senior astronomers that are really inspiring stories. Know what is the research that these women are doing, but also what is their life story, how they became astronomers, all the challenges they go through, you know, and it's really, really inspiring. It's in PDF, it's totally open. It's at ADS. I really suggest that you have a look, because it's really, we're really talking about women that are really impressive. And then we did a lot of outreach activities. We also started with small seed grants that we opened a few years ago to support activities across the continent that are focused on girls that live in challenging conditions, promoting STEM and simply using astronomy as a tool to bring more education and capacity skills and so on. So these are some of the main activities that we've been running.
And we will put the book that you mentioned in the show notes in the show notes of this podcast, so everyone can reach to.
That's great. Yeah. Yes. I will send you the link.
Thank you. So the last question is, what are your future plans about astronomy in the African continent?
Well, I think that there is still there is actually a lot of support that is needed. There is a lot of demand. I think the demand is really increasing because many countries are starting from scratch with astronomy development and with very limited human resources. So there is really a lot of demand. So on the more professional level, well, I hope to continue collaborating with my colleagues, with my students, many of them who already graduated and now they're working in their countries of origin or other African countries as well. And I really enjoy the collaborations that we are having, and continuing with these collaborations, but also giving more visibility, extending the collaborations between Europe, Africa, because also with my position in Spain, I'm also in the situation that now also through different funding modalities, we can search for the funding modalities so that we can strengthen the staff exchanges, the research visits, not only from Africa to Europe, but also from Europe to Africa, and especially for young people, because I think that it's really important. You know, normally you will find that our students that are doing their master PhD in some of African countries, you know, they want to go to Europe or other parts abroad so that they can have research experience, and then at least. You know, with my experience working in Europe, you will get that most of the students actually want to go to either other European countries or US, at least before, when US was another thing than nowadays. More positive, I would say. But I think it's really important that we have more exchanges in both directions, no? So that we can really understand the different realities, concepts, conditions of work. I would really like to contribute more on improving the conditions in which my colleague students are doing research, doing their studies, because there are still many, many challenges. And that we can also improve the research. We did recently a small statistics about with my colleagues about the scientific production in astronomy. And the statistics are really improving. There has been, in the last 10 years, basically the number of papers tripled across the continent, with South Africa being, of course, still the main contributor. But there are other countries that are, improving their research evidently, but still there are many challenges, and we are still only contributing 3% to the global production in astronomy. So I think that will definitely change in the future, and I would like to be part of that change. That most of the collaborations that I have in the future are actually with African countries, so that I can really contribute to that development in terms of research, human capacity building, training more people, with the idea that they can then train many others in their countries of origin. And then continuing with projects focused on society. So the projects that I've been running, like the Sci Girls that I mentioned, focused on girls, I would really like that we find a way that we can, and funding that we can continue with it. And then, with my own childhood, as I mentioned, growing up in old Yugoslavia, going through all the conflicts and how that affected not only my childhood, but basically the consequences that once you leave the conflicts and wars, the consequences of that on all our life, it is really one of the most sensitive topics for me. And then for the past 5 years, when the war started in Ethiopia, it was for the second time that I found myself living in the country that is going through the conflict and war conditions, and it has been really heartbreaking and very, very hard. And with the current situation that we have, and seeing how much contemplating the dark sky played an important role in my life, to, in a certain way, project my dreams, keep the hope, so starting from that, and then everything else that we spoke about previously, the power of astronomy to promote education, to give us hope, to push us to not give up, and so on. Focusing on conflict-affected areas and interacting with communities, especially children, and promoting education through astronomy in conflict-affected areas and war-affected areas is really something that I would like to dedicate more part of my time in the future, yes.
Wow, this is so inspiring. Mirjana, thank you. It's been very, very interesting as well, and you described so many different projects, such inspiration, and you told us what power astronomy has, how you can empower societies, and how you can literally change their lives, not just lives of individuals, but entire communities. So we really have this power to do this. So thank you again.
Thank you very much, Maruška and Dunja, for all the work you are doing. I mean, 6 years of podcasts and giving the visibility to all different stories, promoting astronomy, communicating astronomy to the public. I know what it means. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of time that you have to dedicate, and a lot of, persistence that is there, and I really appreciate, because without it, I mean, all that we do, if we don't communicate well, it will not get the visibility, So really, thank you for all the work and commitment.
Thank you again for being here, and I hope that also our listeners will get that we are under the same sky. Thank you.
Exactly. Yes, that's another that when I mentioned at the end, that I would like to really dedicate more time on activities in conflict-affected areas, not only for empowering the communities that we can do through astronomy, but exactly what you said, that we can use this message that we all live under the same sky and really try to promote peace, although we know that in conflict-affected areas it's not easy to promote, to speak about peace and one humanity and the love and so on, because people went through very frustrating situations. But I think it's really important to give that like broader concept of the humanity that is also existing, and it can help. It can really help, at least to keep the hope, to not lose the hope that the better times can come.
No, o tokratnih novicah bom jaz poročala o pobudi Dan enakosti, ki se je dogajala letos ob spomladanskem enakonočju, točneje v resnici med 18. in 23. marcem. To je mednarodna pobuda, kjer je astronomija v bistvu vezni člen med različnimi dogodki, k katerim so povabljeni udeleženci in kjer udeleženci, torej to so šole, observatoriji in društva, razmišljajo o enakosti, miru, trajnosti in spodbujanju, torej empatije. Simbolni datum te pobude je ravno astronomsko enakonočje in torej trenutek leta, ki ga beležimo sočasno povsod na Zemlji in predstavlja enakost med narodi, ki domujemo pod istim nebom. Ta dogodek prirejajo pisarne za astronomijo v izobraževanju, ki jih sestavljajo prostovoljci različnih držav in ki ohranjajo, spodbujajo uporabo astronomije v šoli in pri pouku, spodbujajo pa tudi mednarodno mreženje in temu je ravno ta aktivnost namenjena. Tej pobudi, ki je sicer krstno izvedbo doživela lani, se je letos to odzvalo kar veliko število različnih šol, organizacij in observatorijev, kot sem prej omenila, toliko, da je bilo v teh dneh torej izvedenih 150 različnih dogodkov, ki so povezali mladino in splošno javnost, in to od Južne Amerike do Japonske. Poleg organizacije izbranega dogodka je vsaka sodelujoča organizacija potem sodelovala tudi pri neki povezovalni aktivnosti in letošnji izbor je bil možen med kreativno fotografijo, sporočilom miru, plesom ali pesmijo in pa skupnim srečanjem na daljavo. No, in iz Slovenije sta se temu mednarodnemu dogodku pridružili Gimnazija Nova Gorica in Gimnazija Murska Sobota, ki sta skupaj sodelovali s šolami iz Italije in Španije in sicer pri izvedbi Eratostenove meritve polmera Zemlje. Starogrški matematik in astronom Eratosten je namreč na zelo iznajdljiv način izračunal Zemljin polmer iz podatka o tem, kako visoko je Sonce bilo oziroma kako je bilo najvišje, kolikšna je bila najvišja višina Sonca na isti dan, in to sicer v Sieni, torej današnjem egiptovskem mestu Asuanu, in Aleksandriji, kjer je domoval. Dijaki Gimnazije Nova Gorica so to izvedli pod mentorstvom profesorja Mirjana Tratnika in sicer merili v Novi Gorici torej trenutek in višino Sonca na nebu ob pač najvišji trenutku, ko je bilo Sonce najvišje, in meritve so izvedli skupaj z italijanskim licejem Tullio Levi Civita v Rimu. Iz razlike med tema višinama Sonca na obeh lokacijah in oddaljenosti med opazovališčema so izračunali v bistvu obseg Zemlje in njihova meritev je bila zelo uspešna. In na Gimnaziji Murska Sobota so žal tega niso uspeli narediti, torej aktivnosti sta tu koordinirala profesorica Mateja Sukič-Kuzma in profesor Renato Lukač. Dan enakosti so v bistvu na tej gimnaziji popestrili z razstavo astronomskih slik, ki so jih dijaki posneli z uporabo teleskopa Gočile, ki ga upravlja Univerza v Novi Gorici, ter z dejavnostjo v okviru predmeta sociologija, kjer so se posvetili raziskovanju idej o družbenih razlikah, pravičnosti in povezovanju z enakonočjem. Izvedli so tudi pesem Under the Same Sun, ki je bila pač predlagana strani organizatorjev in pač zaradi oblačnega vremena v resnici pa niso uspeli izvesti Eratosthenovove meritve, so pa kljub temu torej izvedli aktivnost, kjer so izdelali in preizkušali vodne rakete. Vse te aktivnosti so v bistvu popestrile dogodek, ki ga na gimnaziji že vrsto let prirejajo, in sicer dan pomladi, ki ga praznujejo torej ob spomladanskem enakonočju in prvem dnevu pomladi. Ta zamisel o tem dnevu enakosti je torej je prišla na dan leta 2023. Takrat so se srečali državni koordinatorji mreže astronomije v izobraževanju. Jean-Pierre Sagmidni, to je libanonski koordinator, je v pobudo vključil tudi sredozemske države in od začetka, ko je bila ta pobuda sicer namenjena vključevanju astronomskih univerzitetnih društev, se je potem širše razvila v niz dogodkov ob spomladanskem enakonočju in se bo še naprej v naslednjih letih ponavljala. Skratka, zelo vesela sem, da sem lahko o tem tudi poročala ravno v tej epizodi, kjer sva gostili Mirjano Pović, ravno zaradi tega povezovalnega elementa astronomije, ki ga je tudi ona v intervjuju poudarjala. Letošnji april oziroma dogajanje in kaj bo sploh vidnega na nebu, po mojem je v bistvu v znamenju Lune in misije Artemis 2, ki ste jo najverjetneje tudi vsi spremljali. O njej ste lahko veliko brali v medijih, predvsem vabljeni, da sledite tudi Nazinim profilom, ki redno poročajo o tem, kaj se dogaja na krovu misije in seveda pošiljajo astronavti tudi nam slike Zemlje, ki so čudovite in neverjetne. No. In seveda tudi v tem nas, po mojem mnenju, tudi spodbujajo k temu, da razmišljamo o tem, kaj za nas tudi pomeni živeti na Zemlji in da smo pač vsi skupaj pod istim nebom, kot sem tudi prej poudarjala. Zdaj, aprila meseca, seveda, če boste v teh dneh pogledali proti Luni, boste v bistvu gledali Luno z drugačnimi očmi, ravno zaradi tega, ker vemo, da se okrog nje pelje skupina, peščica astronavtov. Torej, 2. aprila je bila Luna v ščipu, polna Luna, torej, in bo naslednji ščip bo nastopil 1. maja. Vmes bomo pa imeli mlaj 17. aprila, no in kot sva že večkrat omenjali, okrog mlaja je najlepši trenutek za opazovanje predvsem takih nebesnih teles, ki so šibkejša. Med drugim smo konec marca meseca tudi prešli na poletni čas, kar pomeni, da smo premaknili uro za 1 uro naprej in sedaj lahko tudi spremljamo, kako se Sonce vzhaja vedno prej, vzide vedno prej in zaide tudi vedno kasneje. Torej, če tako pogledamo, aprila meseca bo Sonce vzšlo na začetku aprila okrog 6:40, na koncu aprila pa že okrog 5:50. Medtem ko bo zašlo zdaj na začetku aprila ob 19:30, približno, konec aprila pa že ob približno 20:10. Skratka, se bojo zdaljšali dnevi. V tem obdobju lahko na nebu opazujemo recimo značilna ozvezdja, kot so Lev, Volar ali pa zvezdo Spika v Devici. In med planeti naj omenim, da je Venera sedaj večernica in zelo lepo vidna na večernem nebu. Jupiter pa je še vedno zelo svetel in ga najdete v dvojčkih. Izmed možnih dogodkov, ki jih lahko spremljamo v tem obdobju, je seveda Luna, ki jo bomo lahko videli v tankem srpu med Plejadami 19. aprila, in pa ravno tako Luna v skoraj prvem krajcu, ki bo blizu Jupitra v dvojčkih 22. aprila. Med 23. in 24. aprilom bo ravno tako Venera vidna zraven Plejad in na razdalji približno 4 stopinj, tako da to lahko opazujemo ob koncu mraka, približno 1,5 ure po sončevem zahodu. Skratka, vsi ti dogodki oziroma vsi ti prizori, ki jih lahko opazujemo, so tudi navedeni v knjigi Glej k zvezde. ki jo lahko najdete na spletni strani Slovenske astronomske revije Spika. V zapiskih pa najdete tudi prelete mednarodne vesoljske postaje in pač vse ostale zanimive povezave na spletu, na katerih lahko preverjate naprimer tudi poleg preletov mednarodne vesoljske postaje tudi sončevo aktivnost. Tudi v tokratni epizodi sva bili z vami
Maruša
in Dunja. To je bila že 55. epizoda podcasta Temna stran Lune.
Nasvete in vprašanja sprejmeva na naslov podcast.temnastranlune@gmail.com. Poiščete pa naj jo lahko tudi na družbenih omrežjih. Podcast je praktično povsod Temna stran Lune, pisane vse skupaj in brez presledkov.
Hvala vsem, ki ste podcast že podprli na spletni strani ko-fi.com, poševnica Temna stran Lune. Nabrane prispevke bova uporabili za nakup opreme, od mikrofonov do slušalk in mogoče tudi za podporo za bližnje potovanje, ki ga bova opravili, kjer bova predstavili najin podcast na konferenci o komunikaciji astronomije, ki bo potekala v Armeniji.
Podcast je del mreže aktivnosti zavoda Kozmolab, ki se ukvarja s promocijo in popularizacijo astrofizike. Hvala Peliju iz sosednjega podcasta, opravičujemo se za vse nevšečnosti, ki je prispeval glasbeni uvod in zaključek.
Hvala, da ste preživeli čas z nama in se slišimo čez mesec dni.